Like, I don't think anyone ever loses.
It's a great idea.
I played a complete shit team on Yahoo, and I somehow still made money. I'm embarrassed with myself.
You just running the optimal out on Yahoo?
Yeah, no, I don't need. I spend like 2 minutes on Yahoo. Like, I don't even look at what it is.
You just come back and collect your cash at the end of the day.
Dude, I'm not kidding. It's the easiest thing I've ever done.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL strategy show, Monday night football edition. What a wild week, too. It's already been. I feel like I'm going to say that after every week, because at this rate, we're getting some of the wildest games, and it all culminated with Sunday night football, Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs, Byron Pringle touchdowns. Love to see it. Matt was all over that guy in the preseason. Demarcus Robinson touchdowns. Travis Kelce carrying the Baltimore Ravens into the end zone. And then the Baltimore Ravens winning because Lamar Jackson is a freak. Matt, what a way to close it out. And now we've got one tonight with an 11.5-point spread. But I'm not going to lie. From a showdown standpoint, from a lineup building standpoint, I love this game.
I love it too. I mean, I don't really know if there's a game on Showdown I've really disliked. Even that Giants-Washington game, I was like super pumped for that. Last night's Showdown was amazing, especially with some of the touchdowns we saw scored. Like Duvernay was a punt play a lot of people were considering. He got in on that really weird Tyson Williams fumble that he just catches and punches in. But yeah, I'm really excited for tonight's games. It's kind of another situation where maybe not the most exciting teams playing, 2 0-1 squads. The Lions dealing with injuries, one of the most questionable teams in the NFL, but I'm excited to break it down.
Yeah, listen, dude, yeah, I went off the reservation last night when it came to the tournament strategy. I had some Byron Pringle captain lineups. I mean, I went wild. I figured, hey, you know what? Explosive offense. If Pringle rips one and, maybe has another one, which isn't completely out of the question, especially with them doubling Tyreek Hill, anything can happen. When you have an offense that good, all you need is to break one or two. And if that means I can get Mahomes and Lamar and Kelce, and Tyson Williams and whoever, and Mark Andrews or Marquise Brown into the same lineup, it's not the craziest idea. Of course, it didn't bank. It was a profitable lineup. But, you look at some of the lineups that did well yesterday, and you had to be way different. I mean, you had to do some crazy stuff.
Yeah. Tournaments for these massive showdown slates, they've gotten crazy, especially when you start considering the duplication. They're basically running out $1 million every time. So I love to play cash on Showdown. So I think balancing them both is something to look at, particularly with some of the softer pricing we've seen. Tonight will be really interesting with some of the injuries. I think it kind of leads itself to a clear build, which in tournaments means you're going to have to get a little uncomfortable if you're trying to take down one of these huge GPPs.
Yeah. And we will build a lineup. Neither of us have built lineups yet. Little thought experiment towards the end of the show. Build lineups. Maybe we get your input too in chat. Let us know what you think. Let us know in the comments what you think. Top options tonight, top captain. Who's going to take it down? I read all the comments, and I'm always sure to respond. And hey, of course, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Helps us greatly around this way. Subscribe to the channel as well. And let's get into it. Matt, a little week 2 recap before we dive into this. I just want to say one thing. After 2 weeks, there are very few certainties that I know of around the league. And what I mean by that is, outside of Kansas City still having a very good offense and Arizona's offense looking as legit as ever, and the Jacksonville Jaguars and New York Jets still being absolute dog shit, there are so many teams where week 1 performance was wildly different from week 2. I mean, look at the Saints, right? Look at the Eagles offense. Look at the San Francisco offense from week 1 to week 2. And now look at the Packers. Like, would you be shocked if the Packers, who only scored 3 points against a Saints team that basically got blanked against the Panthers yesterday, if the Packers came out and ravaged the Lions? I mean, there's so much unknown for the first 2 weeks, and NFL's a small sample size sport, man.
I'll be honest with you. The biggest surprise to me has been the Las Vegas Raiders. I need to take some personal L's here. It's a team that I was trying to short to begin the year, had them under their win total, and now they've knocked off 2 legit opponents. I don't know what to make of this Raiders team right now. I still would say they're probably on the outside looking into the playoffs because their division is so good, but man, they're really surprising to me.
Yeah. And Henry Ruggs, if he's going to be able to make those type of take the top off the defense plays and actually do it on a semi-regular occurrence, they're going to be dangerous, man. Like they're going to be a dangerous team. Do you believe in the defense is the question?
Not really, especially their DBs. It's comprised of like 18 safeties that Gruden's drafted. I think their corners are questionable, but we have seen them take a step forward. He's had a problem reaching on corners recently, trying to develop them. So I do think it's suspect still. Pittsburgh's not really a dynamic offense, but what they did week one was notable to me. But of course, that division is going to be tough. And another team in that division, Denver, I've been really impressed with them. I kind of thought they would be hamstrung by quarterback play this year, but Bridgewater's been amazing. And if he's going to play like he is and they get Judy back healthy, that's a team that could make some noise. They're really, really strong on defense. Obviously, Fangio, a defensive-minded coach. I really like what they're putting on the field. And again, like they played Jacksonville this week. We need to see them play some legitimate opponents. But so far, returns have been positive.
We have the strategy show at 11 o'clock with Adam Scher and Josh Engelman breaking everything down from week one, going over lineup study on Fantasy Cruncher, what won, what worked, what didn't work. So hang around for all of that. Last thing I'll say, two things, Matt, to follow up your Denver point. It was very nice to see Courtland Sutton look dominant again. And
yeah,
right?
that was awesome.
Straight alpha stuff right there. And we talked about it. Like, hey, this guy will absolutely, if he's healthy, be an alpha receiver. I love that. Second thing, I lied. Three things. Second thing, Tyrod Taylor got no respect coming into this season, and it's really disappointing to see him get hurt because the guy looked good. And third, Derrick Henry had 41 touches last night or yesterday, and 6 of them were receptions, and he tied Julio Jones for the team lead in receptions. What a wild day.
That's crazy to say. I don't think Derrick Henry's ever been a bad receiving back. It's kind of one of those things like Nick Chubb where he's just not always asked to do it. And of course, Derrick Henry's not going to be Kamara, but isn't he a guy you would want to get the ball in space? You know, he's not going to be shifty dynamic, but he's a problem in the open field because of his size and his speed. And it's interesting that Tennessee's never done that before. I hope this is a change moving forward with the new coaching staff. And I mean, that Tennessee defense, there's a chance that they're just bad enough to the point where they're in shootouts all year.
Yeah. And guess what? If Derrick Henry starts getting pass catching work every week, dude, that was the only thing holding him back. If he starts seeing 30 carries and 5 targets, like this guy is going to run away with it.
It's surprising to me he hasn't seen it before because who's been his competition outside of the Deion Lewis years? Jeremy McNichols is still playing legitimate snaps. Like he's not a factor really as a change of pace, but he still gets out there. And Darrington Evans has not been able to stay healthy, unfortunately, for that team. But with like McNichols as the main competition, I don't see how they just don't try to use him as a bell cow every single down in the pass game. Like how much better could McNichols be as a receiver? I don't think at all.
No, I'm with you. So those are some takeaways. And last thing I'll say before we jump into the Lions here, on our Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, I'd love for you to join us today. Whether you're season long, redraft, best ball, dynasty, whatever it is, or you just love football and want to talk about it, we're recapping everything from week 2 at 2 p.m. Eastern. Ben Rasa, Eitan Shander, myself will be breaking down all of the top waiver wire ads for the week and just all of our biggest takeaways, you name it, maybe even a sneak peek at week 3 as well. So join us, Awesemo Fantasy Football channel at 2 o'clock Eastern today, every Monday for a live stream. All right, Matt, let's dive into this. We've got the Detroit Lions on the road, 11.5-point dogs. The biggest thing to me, and this is where I want to start. Well, let me do that. Let me ask you about where you see the game script headed today. I think there's an obvious answer here, but if there's any maybe specific builds that you're approaching, and we don't have to get into the specifics, and if you see this being a spot where Green Bay bounces back in a huge way against a heinous defense for the Detroit Lions.
I think they do. I haven't seen Rodgers play that poorly in a long time. I can't even specifically remember. And I think these situations where you have lopsided spreads, you want to look at some builds that are maybe 5-1. Of course, the Packers implied for significantly more points. And cost isn't really a huge issue on this slate. You can play a lot of the studs from the Green Bay side. And then because of injuries in particular on the Detroit side, some of these really cheap receivers that are going to be forced, hopefully, into some late game PPR action when they're playing from behind. I think the builds are pretty chalky and you're going to run into a lot of like 5-1 Green Bay stacks. And so figuring out how to be contrarian from there is going to be difficult. And I think the key to tonight's slate.
All right. I want to start off with running backs because it's a huge spot. Last week, Jared Goff threw 57 times, Matt, 57 times. Okay. And with that in mind, he threw 57 times. DeAndre Swift ran 11 times. Jamal Williams ran 9 times. So they did have 20 carries combined, right? They ran a lot of plays. I believe Jared Goff played 92 offensive snaps, but that's a lot of snaps. But they also combined, Williams and Swift, for 35% of the target share, right? Even on 57, on 57 carries, that are attempts, that's still a lot. And you just, once again, the logic would dictate, right, based on this matchup, that they're going to be forced to throw again. And they probably struggle to, as we say, establish the run, because they won't be in a position to do so. And if that's the case, are we looking at another situation where DeAndre Swift doesn't have a great season rushing, but has another double-digit target game and is thrust into a huge pass catching role? And in a PPR league, we have to be paying close attention to that, because it sure feels that way.
Yeah, first things first, like the 90 plays per game is significantly above average. Like,
of course.
Like we're talking like nearly 30 plays above average. So, and this is a team we don't expect to be very productive in the year. They should be around average to maybe below average in plays per game and pace. So like the targets they saw were fantastic, but if you bump their target shares down to a normal number, you're not getting anywhere near those kind of plays. I think it's really positive to see Swift get that, but at the same time, he was still splitting time, and it wasn't quite 50-50. It was like 60-30, maybe Swift to Jamal Williams. When you have that in even just the pass game, I think it's going to be tough to trust week in and week out. It's good he's getting it, but I don't know the predictability week to week when it's going to occur. Obviously, you have red zone issues with this team altogether. How many times do they actually score? And on the context of this slate, they're both kind of middling in price. And I think there's some value plays below them that I feel a little bit better about.
Interesting. Okay. So I guess I'm on a slightly different page. I'll explain what I mean. There's 92 plays is a lot. You're right. It's a lot. But let's just even assume that Goff throws 40 times today, which I honestly don't think is even close to out of the realm of possibility. And that's still that's still live. Almost. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said that's live for sure.
Right. And still almost like 20% fewer passes than he threw last week. It's not, or no, actually more than 20% fewer passes than he threw last week. If you took a 35% target share between the two running backs on 40 passes, it's still 14 targets. And if you assume that DeAndre Swift, who last week played 68% of snaps to Jamal Williams 35, you could still see, an easy 8-9 target game from DeAndre Swift here, under the assumption that they're likely playing from behind at Lambeau Field. They are a little bit expensive just given how bad this team is, and the touchdown equity here leaves a lot to be desired, right? Like Swift had a receiving touchdown last game, and Jamal Williams had a rushing touchdown. Very difficult for me to see both of these guys getting into the end zone again. But I do just feel like if he's going to play almost 70% of snaps and you're forced into a pass heavy role once again, shit, dude, Swift saw 20 touches last game. So even, I guess what I'm saying, Matt, is even without 92 offensive plays, let's bring it down to like, say 60, 65. I think Swift is still going to be heavily involved because Tyrell Williams is out. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a rookie. Rashad Perriman was cut before the season started. I know you saw this, but some of the guys getting targets in this offense last week were Trinity Benson. Okay. Darren Fells. I could keep going. Like there are guys that I guarantee you, some of you watching the show have never heard of.
Yeah, it's bad offense. And that's what I'll keep coming back to. I think he's completely fine in tournaments, anything like that. You're going to get there based on raw PPR expectation. But again, it's still split. So DeAndre Swift played 68% of the snaps. Jamal Williams, he was out there for 35. So there was a little bit of overlap there, but they're still mostly using one back on the field. So there's still these low ADOT touches. I think you can always hang your hat on the fact that Goff's going to target that position because it's a low ADOT offense. Goff's not an aggressive quarterback. He never has been in his career. And for showdown slates, I think it's positive. The problem I think you run into on this particular slate is you can't jam the expensive Packers and the Detroit backs. So if you want to play Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, you need to make concessions. And for me, would I rather concede like Devontae Adams and play a Lazard, or would I rather concede like a DeAndre Swift or a Jamal Williams and then play an Amon-Ra St. Brown? I'm going to take the concession at Detroit. So I hope that didn't come off like I don't think Detroit, or excuse me, that Swift and Jamal Williams are good plays. I think when you're making the decisions in your individual lineups, they're the players I end up leaving out from Detroit.
And for what it's worth, if I had to make a concession there, I'm definitely making the concession with Detroit as well. I think what makes them interesting, however, is that on one of these slates where Detroit's offense could be completely stagnant regardless, making a concession, but keeping Swift, but also punting maybe your last player in with a Trinity, I don't even remember his last name, with a
Trinity Benson.
Trinity Benson isn't the most absurd idea. And yeah, of course, he was targeted 6 times, super low ADOT, 19 yards. I mean, this was gross. But this could be one of those games where they score like 6 points. And if that's the case, Trinity Benson's 4 for 30 might be more valuable than you'd think. So let's do this. What are your thoughts on the pass catchers here when it comes to the Detroit Lions? We talked about the running back situation. I think we've broken that down pretty well. Where do you go with the pass catchers and Jared Goff?
So you mentioned it. They're missing their number one, Tyrell Williams. He's out. Khalif Raymond's questionable. He practiced on a limited basis on on Saturday. They have the Saturday practice report. So right now you're removing like a couple of your top players overall. Khalif Raymond led the team in snaps. And even if he plays, like there's a chance he's limited there. Amon-Ra St. Brown played the second most snaps. Like we talked about with the backs, these aren't the players that were like used the most on the field, especially some of these receivers were not targeted much at all. With Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think you can kind of hang your hat on the fact that he'll play more of an underneath role. He's somebody that's going to run in and out of the slot. He did see 4 targets. Again, basically no production for any of these receivers. I'll come back to the fact that he just ran more routes and played more snaps than a guy like Trinity Benson, even though Benson out-targeted him, like Quintez Cephas out-targeted him. Neither of those players were on the field as much as Amon-Ra St. Brown.
So if you had to rank receivers today, and again, Tyrell Williams is out. I think we could all agree that that is significant enough, even though this is not a good offense. He was still the clear-cut guy on there that actually has a track record behind TJ Hawkinson. Excuse me. Behind TJ Hawkinson, who is, sorry, I had to sneeze. I had to mute myself.
It's all good. I think assuming Khalif Raymond plays, he's the number one right now. It's Raymond. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. From there, flip a coin between Trinity Benson and Khalif Raymond. I mean, here's their statistics. Trinity Benson, 53% of snaps. Quintez Cephas, 35. Targets, Trinity Benson, 6. Quintez Cephas, 7. I think there's a ton of noise with it being a 1-game sample. And like Amon-Ra St. Brown, he was out there. I have the snap counts here, just one sec. 64% of the snaps, but he only saw the 4 targets. So I'm still going to come back to the player that's on the field a little bit more, even if there is some noise with these these Lions. I would rank them Raymond, Brown, I guess Cephas, and then Benson.
Am I wrong to say it's kind of tough to get the Hawkinson today? Because I know his ownership is relatively high, and that's just going to be a product of the slate as their best pass catcher and someone who looked really good in week 1. But I'm not going to lie, Matt. I want to do what I can to get, and we both talked about, like, we think Hawkinson could be 1,000-yard pass catcher this year just based on the offense. I know Ben Ross has been all over him as well. His receiving yards prop this year was like 675 or 725, which is just, in my opinion, a smash spot to the over. But I want Jones, I want Adams, I want Rodgers. And I'm not saying you can do that in every lineup, but in the event that you do, Hawkinson becomes pretty damn hard to get to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It comes down to that. It's like the running backs. You have to make some concessions somewhere. Hawkinson did have very good volume in week 1. He saw 10 targets. 2 of those came in the red zone. When they are in scoring position, I do think he's going to be Jared Goff's favorite. It's just how many times are they in scoring position tonight? And I do think Green Bay's defense is much weaker than it has been in recent seasons. With that said, I'm still going to always fall back on the Vegas totals, what bookmakers are projecting for a spread. And Detroit doesn't have a fantastic implied team total, especially when you consider their major underdogs. So that's in low risk contests of cash games. I do play cash and Showdown. Hawkinson won't be in the lineup just because you do have to make concessions with some of the Green Bay guys. But in tournaments, he has the most locked in target share on the team. I think it's going to be better than DeAndre Swift's long-term, even though DeAndre Swift had one more target than Hawkinson in week 1. So for tournaments, he'll be somebody I'll look at.
All right. And lastly, Austin Siebert and anybody else. I'm not even going to ask you about Detroit's defense unless you think we could see a repeat performance of the Packers offense from last week, but I don't.
As I think the kickers and the defense are fine. They're both going to be tournament plays because they're the Lions kicker and defense. I don't have a lot of faith in the Lions defense, but those are situations you potentially want to target in your massive tournaments. I will just say about Rodgers, like he doesn't have a large propensity for turnovers throughout his career. We haven't seen that. I think week one was a bit of an anomaly, just what we've seen. And knowing the Packers offensive line struggles won't be exploited as much by Detroit's defense, I think it'll give him more time to have just to protect himself and then the receivers to open up.
Okay. Hey, I don't know if you guys know this, but No House Advantage is a pretty awesome site where you've got peer-to-peer player props and all of the tools over at awesemo.com to help you win on this site every single day. The Awesemo player, No House Advantage player prop tool, the optimal lineup tool, both of which, by the way, are entirely free. No House Advantage also, this is the biggest thing, right? You got all these player prop sites. The best thing about No House Advantage, and you can download this in the Google Play Store or in the in the App Store. The best thing about it is these lines are static. They don't move throughout the day. So news could come in or a line could change on other books significantly, right? A prop could move wildly in one direction. It stays the same at No House Advantage. Not everyone's paying attention to that. Not everyone is shopping around at other books and finding those odds and looking towards No House Advantage and finding that edge where you're getting insane closing line value at the close, right? That doesn't happen very often, especially when you're getting other sites that change them routinely. I mean, I'm talking other player prop betting sites like this, not No House Advantage. Other sites like ours also don't have No House Advantage player prop tools and optimal lineup tools. And of course, No House Advantage, the best part, has a $25 match deposit bonus when you sign up and deposit for the first time using the promo code Awesemo. So I've always said this, but it's an amazing way to build your bankroll. Even if you were to take some of that and go try and win these $1 million, $500 prizes, whatever, elsewhere, you got to find a place to build your bankroll. There's no better place to do it than No House Advantage. Money is money. Take advantage of it when you can. Use the free tools at Awesemo. Use the promo code Awesemo to get that $25 when you sign up and deposit. And of course, use the edge to your advantage with these props being static throughout the day, throughout the week. That is the biggest way to find an edge around here, where the edge has very much disappeared in a lot of other spots. Go to nohouseadvantage.com, download it in the App Store or the Google Play Store, and use that promo code Awesemo when you sign up to get that bonus. All right, Matt. Green Bay side of the ball. I just want you to run with this for a second in terms of what you see happening here, because Aaron Jones struggled in week one, along with everyone for this offense. But absolute smash spot for him. Smash spot for Aaron Rodgers. Smash spot for Davante Adams. And pretty much everyone in this offense that gets any semblance of a workload. The thing that sucks about Green Bay, but is also good in a sense for a showdown slate, is like Jones, Adams, and Rodgers Jones and Adams is where this offense is the most heavily concentrated, especially with Jamal Williams gone out of the passing game. But there's always that chance that Robert Tanyan grabs 2 touchdowns on 3 targets, or that Lazard or Valdez-Scantling break off a long one. So let's try and break this down and how you think the best way to construct things tonight is for the Packers.
I think you pretty clearly want Davante Adams in your lineup. The work he saw in week one, again, they pulled their starters in the third quarter. So Davante Adams barely played 70% of the snaps, 7 targets. They just weren't competitive. That should come way up. This is a dude that should have been the wide receiver 1 last year, but was hampered a little bit by injury. But when he was out there, target share significantly north of 30%. He's just going to dominate looks. And now you have a Detroit defense much weaker. They don't have the personnel to defend Davante Adams. I think he's a priority, even though he's really expensive on every platform you're playing tonight. Behind him, you're going to see a little bit of a rotation. It's Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but Randall Cobb is going to come out there occasionally. He only played 26% of the snaps, so really bad showing for Randall Cobb, and they traded for him. I think he'll play that situational role, and the snaps will increase for him, but there's not going to be like 100% of the snaps guy behind Adams. I think you'll see Lazard, Valdez-Scantling, and Cobb roll, with the potential for maybe even some others to work in, like their third-round pick, Amari Rodgers. He's like a Randall Cobb clone. He's not going to play really outside of the slot, kind of making Randall Cobb and Amari Rodgers, like one of them's a wasted asset this year, unless they can both find their way on the field. Those would be like your punt plays, but overall I would rank them Davante Adams number 1 and a really big priority to him. And then Allen Lazard, Valdez-Scantling, those are going to be your GPP plays.
Are there any mega dart throws in GPPs outside of those? You mentioned a couple names, but like, are there any? Can you look at just a pure out punt, full out punt with an Amari Rodgers or Taylor or Randall Cobb, who was targeted once? All three of those guys played 26% of snaps. They played 15 snaps each. And mind you, only 42 offensive snaps for the Green Bay Packers last week.
I think Cobb would be your best one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt, that's not true because Jordan Love played 15. So they played 57. It's just Aaron Rodgers came out at the end of the game. My fault.
Yeah, 57 still below average though. So they didn't get close to meeting expectation, as anyone who watched that game knows. But Randall Cobb, he's the player that was on the field before Amari Rodgers. Amari Rodgers snaps, a lot of them came when everybody was benched. And again, it's going to be hard to take things away from Green Bay's week 1 box score or their snap counts, anything like that. Amari Rodgers is near the minimum. I guess you can give him that, but we know Randall Cobb has a role. I don't know how large it's going to be. That's why he's so risky, but that's factored into price.
So for me, I think you hit the nail on the head. If people are looking at this game and not acknowledging that Amari Rodgers and because I'm assuming Taylor had to have come on in garbage time too, that these two guys both played 15 snaps. So did Jordan Love, right? And this was straight garbage time, zero to do with the fact that if this was a competitive game, that they wouldn't be out there. Cobb, as you mentioned, is the interesting one to me because Aaron Rodgers lobbied to get him there, right? And I don't think this is an instance where Cobb is going to carve out a huge role in this offense by any stretch. However, Rodgers has targeted him in the red zone before. And ultimately, if you just need a full out punt, this is one of the cheapest you're going to get where he could see 2 targets, maybe a red zone target. And as we saw with a guy like Byron Pringle, who was only targeted twice yesterday and also ended up being a great play, they can pay off or they can give you a 0, but that's a risk I'm willing to take in Showdown.
I agree with you. I like Cobb for that reason. He's a leverage play. I wouldn't consider captaining him, but he's not supposed to be very owned. One thing I want to bring up with these 3 receivers behind Davante Adams, they don't play 4 wide a lot. Green Bay actually uses some double tight end occasionally, but who would be the most likely to come off the field for Randall Cobb? I've been trying to think about this a lot, and I think it's Allen Lazard. Again, this is going to be a rotation, but the positive Marquez Valdes-Scantling brings to the offense is he's a guy that ran a 4.3 740-yard dash. You don't have anybody else in the entire offense bringing you that legitimate speed. Allen Lazard doesn't have it. Davante Adams doesn't have it. Amari Rodgers and Randall Cobb both don't have it. Valdes-Scantling is the lid lifter to the offense, which makes me think his role is secure. We did see that in week 1 to a degree till they pulled their starters. But Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he was out there for almost a full snap share when Rodgers was on the field. He actually saw 8 targets, which was a bit surprising to me. But again, they were playing well from behind. They had to go for those deep looks. And that's his role in the offense, which lends itself to tournaments.
Any thoughts on Robert Tanyan?
I think Tanyan's a great GPP play. Like some of his snaps, again, depressed like everybody else. But I think you might see Tanyan split time a little more this year than you have in the past. So like they have a ton of tight ends on the roster. Mercedes Lewis isn't going away, and his presence isn't necessarily going to be something you want to consider for tournaments yourself. He's a blocker, but that'll take Tanyan off the field at times. Dominic Daphne's a guy that played a ton, mostly towards the end of the game. He's a special teamer for them. With Tanyan, I think he's clearly behind Davante Adams in targets. And then where does he rank from there? Last year, propelled by a lot of touchdown scoring. At the prices, I think I would rather take a shot on a receiver with a little more upside in tournaments. But with that said, Tanyan's still a fine play himself.
Okay. And if people are worrying about red zone targets from last week and all of that stuff, I mean, you have to throw all of that out the window. All of it out the window. There were basically no red zone targets. And, Malik Taylor saw 2 inside the 20, garbage time. Robert Tanyan did see 1, though. Him and Adams were the only guys targeted in the red zone when Rodgers could get them in there. So the red zone, the touchdown equity for a guy like Robert Tanyan is high enough for me to be willing to consider him. What did you make of the backfield breakdown between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon before garbage time last week, Matt?
Yeah, you saw A.J. Dillon play a role, and that's not too surprising, I think. Jamal Williams played this role previously. Aaron Jones has never been a bell cow back, except for in the case of injury. And A.J. Dillon's a dude that had a lot of draft capital coming in. The Packers spent a second rounder on him. He's different than Aaron Jones, who's a bit of a smaller back. I don't want to call Aaron Jones undersized. He's around 205 to 210 pounds, depending on his playing weight, and he's explosive. Dylan's an enormous, big bruising back. I do think they will both have a role. I think this is going to skew like 70-30 Aaron Jones, maybe 60-40 Aaron Jones, but Dylan's going to have a role, and he's very cheap today. We didn't see any red zone trips. Like the Packers were in the red zone just so infrequently in week one. I am a little concerned that maybe the red zone role would become Dylan's because of the size differences, but that's not really something we have a sample size for yet. But I'm very interested in both backs because of the spread. I think there's a lot of situations where you can play them both because AJ Dillon's still really cheap on both platforms, and the Packers just might put up enough points, have positive game script where both of them get there.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna say the fact that to think that you could have Jones and I don't know if you're saying play them both in different lineups. I'm saying you can play them both in the same lineup.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. I don't think that's out of the question at all. And I hate to predict blowouts, right? And I'm not even predicting this as a spot where it's like, oh yeah, AJ Dillon is going to get the garbage time run. I'm not saying predicting garbage time in football is an exercise in futility. I'm telling you right now, it's just not a good idea. Okay. It very rarely works, but that doesn't mean that they have a lead and that AJ Dillon isn't worked in enough and efficient enough. And one of my props we'll get to with this backfield in a minute has to do with the Green Bay Packers run game. I'm with you, man. This is one of the few spots this season where we'll probably look at it and be like, I think you can build a lineup with both of these guys and potentially win it for sure. So I like it. What about Green Bay defense and kicker before we build a lineup here? I
think the kicker is going to be in your optimals just because of the game script overall. They're massive favorites here. And with that, you have them projected for significantly more points. So a kicker is kind of locked into a floor. I'm not as interested in kickers for tournaments. This game does have a healthy 49-point total. So it's a situation where the total's rising. You're not going to see as many kicker optimals in these large field tournaments. That doesn't mean it can't happen, just slightly less likely. The same thing goes with defense, but because of the spread, I think you're pretty clearly favoring Green Bay. I still have concerns with Green Bay's defense. They only have one good corner. Their best edge rusher, Zadarius Smith, is out. It's a depleted defense compared to what we've seen in recent years. I still think they hold an advantage over Detroit, but some of these weaknesses, Detroit might be able to move the ball here. The bookmakers suggest that with a 49 total as well.
And Jordan Burkhardt says Lions' best corner is out for the season, and the secondary was already bad. Before that, Rodgers should carve them up if his O-line gives him time. No doubt. Like this could absolutely be a game where Rodgers, similar to Brady yesterday, 4 quick touchdown pass. Absolutely. But it could also be one where the running backs carve them up. So you have to be able to play both angles of this. And I don't even know how good Okudah was. I know he's a first-round pick, but I don't know. Would you have considered him very good at this stage of his career?
No, but he is their best player. Like he's
sure.
Right.
Oh, no doubt. And Jordan even put that in quotes. So props to him.
Oh, you guys are both on it then. I feel the same.
But what I'm saying is it's not enough for me to be like, man, I didn't really like the Packers passing game, but boy, now I love it. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
That's what I'm saying. So, all right, Matt, let's build a lineup here. Let's have some fun and build ourselves a lineup. And if you guys want access to the ownership tools for Showdown, we have them for main slate, but also for Showdown, for the tiers, player projections, ownership rankings, the boom bust tool, the lineup builder. I mean, all of this stuff, right? And not just for football, but for every sport out there. If they have contests on FanDuel, DraftKings, No House Advantage, we've got tools for them. All of them created by Alex Baker himself, Awesemo himself, used by Alex Baker himself as well to win a ton of money. They are great tools. And we have the Fantasy Cruncher add-on if you want to jump on board with that as well. Whether you want to do a weekly pass, monthly, annual, make a real commitment, or really an investment out of this, do a single sport for just football or all of the sports, whatever you want, football, basketball, baseball, PGA, NASCAR, esports, whatever it is, we got you covered over at awesemo.com/join. And I believe, Jordan, what's the promo for this one? Is it NFL Strategy Show? Yeah, NFL Strategy Show, all caps, one word, gets you, I think, 15% off your first 25%. 25. It looked like 52 because you're backwards, but 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. If you want to check that out, go to awesemo.com/promos, NFL Strategy Show, all one word, use caps when you do so. But yeah, man, we got just some incredible tools across the board. And if Awesemo, if Alex Baker's using them, I feel pretty comfortable doing so as well. Matt, we didn't talk much about captain. So quickly tell me this, and then we'll build a lineup. Who do you like most in the captain spot today? If you had to pick 3 players, the obvious answer is Jones, Adams, and Rodgers.
Yeah, those are the top 3. I think Devontae Adams is a little bit of cut above because Rodgers doesn't have a lot of upside with his legs. So again, we talk about this a lot on DraftKings specifically. When targets are funneled to very narrow distributions, Devontae Adams being, I think, the forefront of this in the entire NFL, there's a reasonable chance he outscores the quarterback. So I love Adams in the captain.
Okay, so do I. I like Jones too, though. I don't mind Jones in the captain because if you go Rodgers and Adams and fade the other wide receivers for Green Bay, it could result in a situation where Rodgers isn't bad. He's good, right? But doesn't need to be great. Adams racks a lot of that up, is almost exclusively involved in the passing game or the top guy for sure. And then Aaron Jones runs wild with a couple of scores. So I think there are some iterations where Aaron Jones could easily be the optimal captain. Matt, let's make a tournament lineup. And someone did ask us, are you going to make a cash game lineup? No, but if you want Matt to give a quick layout on how you develop cash game lineups for showdown slates, it shouldn't take you very long at all.
No, I give you like a minute on that. I think today you're probably looking at 5-1 or 4-2s in favor of Green Bay. You definitely don't want to take any risky stances. So you're either playing Rodgers or Adams in cash. You're probably loading up on the 3 studs you mentioned that you're considering for cash. And then because we have some strong value, it kind of builds itself. I think you want to look at either Amon-Ra St. Brown or Trinity Benson for salary saving. You want to throw AJ Dillon in there for salary saving. And then because the Packers are such heavy favorites, low risk contest, something like Mason Crosby is going to give you a great floor.
And hey guys, last question here, if you don't mind. We get 70 likes, 270 people watching. Usually the viewership will climb throughout the day. It's an early show on the West Coast too. A lot of people still sleeping. Not Jordan Klein though, producing the show, waking up at 5 a.m. and he's not feeling well. He's about to shake his head probably because every time I compliment him, he just feels strange. But Jordan Klein, hit that like button for our boy Jordan Klein getting up at 5 a.m. and putting this content out, helping us produce all of this. If we could get to 100, that would be fantastic. We're 26 from getting there. Only takes you a second. I appreciate it. All right, Matt, captain spot. Let's go large field single entry, right? You got like these $100, $50 entry ones where it's 10, 20K to first. Let's do something like that. So it's not the one where it's 500K up top, nothing absurd, but also a decent size.
All right. I think we want to, even with this, I think we probably want to take a stand on either Adams or Rodgers. Now they're both coming with fair ownership. You're not really getting a break on either one. You have Adams at 20.5, Rodgers at 19. Do you have a preference between them?
I like Adams a little bit more. And I think I think because just the likelihood that Adams goes off and Rodgers has a decent game, but not a huge game, that seems like a higher likelihood, just given how LaFleur already said they didn't run enough last week. He was embarrassed by how little they were able to run the football. I think they're going to try and have a relatively balanced offense. I still think Rodgers is great, but I could see Adams just absolutely going nuclear here.
I agree with you.
All right. So let's go Adams. I'll throw Rodgers in because I think it just makes sense. And you go next.
All right. So I think for this size field tournament, these like mid-size, I think a lot of people are going to play Aaron Jones. But I think if we flip the build and play some sort of, not an expensive Detroit player, but at least a mid-range one, I'm talking like Swift or Jamal Williams or Hawkinson, it's going to give us our leverage we want because we already have Adams and Rodgers. Do you have a preference between the mid to expensive price Detroit guys? I kind of like Swift.
I like Swift just because you're getting a little bit better value on him in terms of price point, and I don't think the projection should be too far off between him and Hawkinson. All right, Matt, I like that. I'm going to go, since we don't have Jones, I'm going to throw AJ Dillon in here.
I love that.
Okay, so we got Adams, Rodgers, Swift, Dillon. I like that. 47.50 remaining for the last 2 players.
All right, this is where it gets tough. I want to try Amon-Ra and see what we can do with our last spot.
Okay, so he's 2,400. That leaves us 7,100. Oh, for Robert Tanyan, that's not bad.
Love it.
That's a nice lineup right there. Adams, Rodgers, Swift, Dillon, St. Brown, and Tanyan. And the reason I like that is you don't need Goff because the touchdown equity here is pretty low anyway. Swift can at least do some stuff on the ground. Hopefully he does. But also, while we don't have Aaron Jones, we're at least mitigating that to some extent, at least the risk with AJ Dillon, and that feels pretty good.
Yeah, and that was our concession because we're playing a mid-sized field tournament. We can't just play with the stone chalk. We're taking a little bit of a projection downgrade by going to Swift, but that's where we're getting our leverage. So that's why I feel good about it too.
All right, awesome. 2 likes away from 100. Appreciate you guys. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel. We are making our way quickly to 60K. Thanks to all of you for hanging out with us every day, because it ain't happening without you. So we love you for that, but you already knew it. Matt, let's close it out with our top props and our game predictions, and then we'll head on our way. And remember, MLB strategy show coming up, and then at 11, the NFL strategy show. And then at 6:30 and then 7:30, you've got the NFL Showdown deeper dive and the live before lock. I mean, we got it all for you today. Just be sure to check all of that out. And Eric Linkfist's waiver wire video should already be posted over at the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, getting it out there nice and early for you to get ahead of everybody for week 3. Matt, favorite prop for tonight's Monday Night Football game? I
was talking all this smack about DeAndre Swift. I like the over in his receiving yards.
Yeah.
28.5, pretty low for him.
I do too. All right. So I wish I could take like a combined over prop on Jones and Dillon rushing yards. That would be pretty nice, but I can't. They're at 67.5 and 35.5. Honestly, I think Jones runs roughshod over them and wouldn't be surprised if he has Jones has just the ability to break him 20, 30 yards here and there. I like the over on Aaron Jones. I'm actually going overs on both of my props here. I'm going over on Jared Goff, 34.5 pass attempts. I just still think that is low for this game and for a team that is a 12-point dog on the road. Even though we don't expect last week's volume, I think he could easily get 35 plus pass attempts, Matt.
I agree with you.
And your final prediction on this game, total sitting at, what is the total right now?
49.
40. Wait, what?
49 points.
49. Okay. Yeah. And the Packers have 30 of those points to their name in the implied total, right?
Yes.
More than that. I think it's 30.5. And they are 12-point favorites. The line has actually moved since I made the run sheet. What do you got here? Sides and total.
My favorite bet would be towards the over with some of the issues both these teams have on defense. We talked to Kuda, Zadarius Smith. The Packers secondary has not looked improved whatsoever. That's my favorite bet. I don't love the overall spread with the Packers favored by 12. Not one I'm going to add to my card. If I was picking one, it would be Green Bay, but again, not one I want to take. I would rather look towards the total with the over being the side.
Yeah, 12 points is a lot. Throw it in a 7-point teaser, a 10-point teaser, tease that down to 2. There you go. Tease that down to 2. Find some other games to do that with, and you'll be in good shape. And as a matter of fact, the teaser with a 12-point spread works pretty well if you were to tease it down 7 as well. But you got to find some other good spots. I teased the Falcons up to 22.5 yesterday, Matt, and lost by 23. So
unbelievable.
I know, on a garbage time interceptions. I already told you about it. It's just funny because everyone thinks teasers are locks when you tease like big. They're not ever.
Yeah, you're always going to be conceding something.
Yep, no doubt about it. Anyway, thanks to you guys as always for hanging out. We will catch you back here later today for the deeper dive for the live before lock. Matt and I will be back with Alex Brown Thursday for Thursday Night Football Showdown right here at 9 a.m. As always, say thanks to your boy Jordan Klein in the chat before you head out. Leave a comment down below. What do you think tonight? What's going to win this? Who's the optimal captain? We'll catch you back here next time. Follow Matt at Matt_Gajeski, myself at Lafayette_D. Peace.